Welcome, a cousin. So, are you a part of the needing others to change so you can feel okay club? Wonderful. Well, welcome. Take a seat. This episode is going to be a good one. It's going to be an iconic one because, first, hi, if you're new here, my name is Travis. This is Percy Ponders, and it's a space for sensitive and thoughtful people to figure out life and love together because we live in the emotional dark ages. And if you have a modicum of care and heart and pay attention as a somewhat self reflective individual, my God, you might feel like you're going mad. And you aren't. There's just some things that people who are wired like us have to keep in mind to thrive and get what's ours. So we have a lot to cover and not a lot of time. With this topic of assuming they won't change and assuming they won't change without losing your mind, assuming they won't change without losing sleep. Because I think we're similar in that we need for others to do more of the things we'd like to feel okay because have anxious predispositions. I've been there and I've worked my way through a lot of that habit and tendency to need to, please do this. Please reassure me in this way. Please act right. Please do what I would do in this situation. And they don't, right? Because people aren't you. And also, not everybody wants to grow. So let's first understand why people don't change and understand how to be okay no matter what. Okay? And then we'll understand how to be okay even when we care a lot. Okay? Because we feel. And when you feel, well, thanks, universe, for making us caring and sensitive. Yeah, when you feel it, things affect you more. Okay, it takes you longer to get over things. You might ruminate on things for a while. You have to really get things off your mind. Wow. So, have you ever noticed how maybe there's a relative in your life or someone in your life who has very preventable health conditions, right? Real preventable health conditions. The doctor's like, my guy, you just gotta stop doing 2 liters of fruit punch a day and your blood sugar would be normal. The diabetes, poof, it would go away. Some people have diabetes because they were born that way. It's one of the types. Drop it down below if you know the type. I'm sorry, I should know it. Okay. But then other people have the type where, yeah, you just don't eat that much. Don't eat that. And we understand food deserts and all that. But there are certain people who it's like, no, you actually do have the means to not eat yourself into an early grave, but you're opting to do the 2 liters of fruit punch. And even when presented with that information from the doctor, that's like, you, my guy, my girl, cut back on the fruit punch. Right? Instead of just cutting back on the fruit punch, they double down on it. And for that reason, some of those people are no longer with us. Gone too soon. Gone too soon. Gone too soon. That's what they are. Okay. What is it about people who could change but choose not to? Okay. Well, carry on. Then you have the example of the father or the male figure who could be present in his kid's life. Okay. And instead of doing the necessary work to be a caring, loving, present parent, he doubles down on being a jerk, on being himself, right? On living according to his terms and what benefits him to the detriment of everyone connected to him, right? And it's like, well, why won't they change? Here's the thing. Have you considered how hard it is for you to change? And maybe you've changed because, well, you had to, right? It was by necessity that a lot of us got into self reflection and healing work because every day felt like standing smack in the middle of a burning building. actively collapsing, smoke just enveloping each orifice of our lungs. We had to change. We had to go to therapy. We had to read some self-development books. We had to do something because what life was given was not given what it needed to give. You know what I'm saying? But it's most people don't change until they're presented with a humbling circumstance that forces them to change. A rock bottom that makes them wake up, wake up, wake up, change. And even then, a lot of people don't change. A lot of people would rather die of a preventable death. A lot of people would rather forego a good relationship with their kids. A lot of people would rather miss out on somebody who could be the love of their life and the best person that ever happened to them because they don't want to change and grow and evolve the parts of themselves that aren't working. All right. And you know what's interesting about this topic, right before we get into a spicy story around being okay, no matter what people do, whether or not they change. One thing I've noticed on this subject of change is, have you seen how some people grew up with a more selfish model of love and other people grew up to know a more selfless model of love? And I think that has a lot to do with how people relate with change. That certain people who were taught, you can do you, or people like you get to be themselves, or you saw your dad or some role model in your life be selfish. Odds are selfish behavior was modeled to you and you learned to be that. Or could be the opposite, that for some reason or another, you are taught that to love is to be selfless. And so you become a sacrificial lamb to your detriment. And that's a whole different can of worms, right? You have people putting up doctor's appointments to help other people. And it's like, wait a minute, you didn't put the oxygen mask on yourself. What are you doing over here helping other? It's not making sense. Make it make sense. It can't. So then, well, Travis, we get it. People don't change. What do we do about, like, how can I be okay with people not doing what I want them to do? How can I be okay? Let me read you something that I wrote, and then I have to tell you some wild dating stuff. Anywho, this is something I wrote. I felt like I channeled it the other day. That sounds annoying, but I want to share it with you in case it resonates. The truth will piss you off before it sets you free, and that's all right. It's taking people and events as they are rather than how you'd like them to be. It's letting things not go to plan and going back to the drawing board rather than submitting to hopelessness. It's, this seems like a recurring issue in my life. Let me get some help. Let me work on that. Right? Denial postpones the cure to very solvable problems. Even if the solution is not my problem. Even if the solution is, let me get somebody else to do it. Even if the solution is, fix it, Jesus. You know what I mean? It's an interesting one. It's an interesting topic, this topic of change and needing others to do what we'd like, to feel okay. Needing circumstances even to go to plan in order for us to feel okay, right? It's human to really want things to go to plan. And when you grow up in circumstances where things feel very out of your control and whatnot, that can be a reason we become a little bit more anxious. But I also think that it's a very human thing to just want reliability, to want people you can count on, to want reciprocity when you pour into others, right? You want other stuff pour into you that sounds a little bit gross, like a big vat of grape Kool-Aid you want. Okay, I'm taking that too far. It's too far. Okay, so what has helped me with healing my anxious tendencies and being okay with people, circumstances, particularly people and men and dating? Yeah, not wanting to change. Okay, so I've accepted a few things. I consider these canon. I swear by them. I've read a lot of books about them. I have a list of reads down below, resources. I host a whole community online. You can check that out. I work with people who are going through seasons of transition and need support, one-on-one insight, all that. Check out those resources down below. But one thing I've learned that's very interesting on the heels of realizing certain people won't change, and it's not our business to make them change, is it's my job, if I have anxious tendencies, to figure out, what does it take for me to feel secure and grounded within myself so that I don't fall apart just because things fall apart? So that I don't fall apart just because people didn't do what I expected. Okay. Woo. There's this book called Homecoming by Dr. Tamara Bryant. And then she talks about something very connected to this, which is the idea of coming home to yourself. This idea of creating a sacred, inviolate, pristine inner sanctum within yourself. And also resources outside of yourself in your life that help you to be solid as a rock. Dum, dum. Great song. Great song. And so much of the work of unlearning anxious, controlling, or even codependent patterns is learning how to self-regulate, right? Is learning how to increase your capacity for discomfort with unknowns and uncertainties. Because let's be honest. When you get into anxious Andy mode, there's a tendency to do certain things that make things worse, right? There's a tendency to start to send, right, the constitutional length texts. I'm talking, there's a temptation to start to do things that make things worse. What does it take to create home within yourself? Also, expect more of the right people. Have standards. That's important too. But what does it first take to cultivate home within yourself? That's something worth journaling on. Okay. Yeah. Another thing is, when it comes to building security within yourself, a secure person with high self-esteem is a dangerous person. Because a secure person with high self-esteem is just not going to tolerate certain things, is not going to entertain anything. You can be understanding if people are really going through a time. But when it comes to like dating and people who you barely know, one thing we swear by is that you don't just give people the benefit of the doubt. They have to earn that, right? It's about demonstrating the right behavior that would allow that person to qualify to be a part of your iconic cipher of a life. Woo! Okay. I'm just saying. And the issue some of us get into, okay, how do I know? Maybe I've been there before. Uh-oh. The issue we get into when we get into scarcity mindset, and like, oh, let me take everybody on as a fixer-upper project, is like, do you not know that there's someone out there, there's some people out there who would climb walls and defy gravity to happily give you what you want, to happily meet your needs without saying, oh, you're asking for too much. Oh, I think it's just too much too soon that you want me to communicate and express my intentions with you after talking casually for 5 months, right? Because here's a sneaky thing, like I mentioned about self-esteem and standards. as your standards increase and your self-esteem goes up, there's certain stuff you don't tolerate. Like I haven't had a situationship. And I don't say that like, oh, I'm on a high horse. My highest horse would be like, we're talking My Little Pony. Like that big. Because we all know if you've been around these parts long enough, you know that I'm more than a work in progress. You know that I've made a lot of stupid decisions. I talked about some of them in my birthday message episode. Like dating someone that sends you all the way back to ground zero financially. But here's the thing. Like we said, with high standards and self-esteem, you just don't entertain certain things. You don't entertain a situationship. What? Unless you wanted that, why? That's only benefiting one party if that's not what you want. Why would you entertain that? Why? With all the fish in the sea and knowing that most people, I'll say men too, are like a local bus. You can have another one every 5 to 10 minutes on the hour. You really can. That mentality frees you up from the whole scarcity. Like, oh, well, I'll never have another. Oh, well, there won't be more opportunities. If you keep getting hotter, keep working on yourself, keep glowing and growing in self-esteem, keep making sure you focus on living a life you enjoy. Oh, the world is your oyster. The world is your oyster, and you're gonna have the chef's pick. Okay, the chef's not the chef's meow. The I like it. The chef's meow. Whatever you call it, you're gonna have that. Because I know for myself, I've been happily single for a minute, gone on dates and whatnot, met individuals, but it's like either genuinely right person, wrong time because I'm not moving in the context where it happened, or it's like, no, like the way our self-esteem is set up, we don't do that. We don't do flaky. We don't do weird. We don't do, oh, you like me until you realize I don't hate myself and I have standards and I'm going to voice them respectfully, but I'm going to voice them. Oh, then you get weird. I've been through too many rounds and bouts of that to know it's better to be alone than poorly surrounded. And we don't operate with scarcity because we know, like we mentioned, you keep doing the work on yourself. Not like you're some sort of self-development project to hack, but just working on being more embodied and more you in all the right ways and more confident and grounded. And also doing the things to be your hottest self, right? Taking care of yourself. Like, it's going to get better. It is. We subscribe to it gets greater later around here because a lot of e-cousins are also late bloomers. What a shame to have peaked in high school or college. What a shame to have peaked in your 20s. Yikes. When you're a late bloomer, it genuinely gets greater later. It does. Because you've not only had all this time to develop your personality and your character so you're not a dick, but you've also had time to get your sense of humor in order. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you've had time to really sort through some things that your peers who peaked early didn't get to sort through because they were busy being cool and they were busy fitting in and they were busy having a lot of incentives to not work on themselves because they didn't have to. So it's not all that bad that other people don't want to change. As you cultivate that sense of safety within yourself, as you get grounded within yourself, as you know it's better to be alone than poorly surrounded. Because the more you start to do all those things in concert, well, one, all those things in concert is more than enough to consume your time. So you don't need to be boy crazy or obsessive about anything that's beyond you. But two, the more you start to do all the right things in concert to heal those anxious and clingy and controlling tendencies, you feel a grounded assurance in yourself. And that's not nothing. And on top of that, then, it frees you up to focus on what really matters and only make time for that. The friends, the family, the prospective romantic candidates, all of that. It really frees you up. And as I've mentioned in other videos, does working on yourself make your dating pool smaller? Absolutely. Absolutely, positively. And there's an irony to that I also touched on in another episode, because you are more attractive as you get better, but there are fewer people who have done the work as you get better. And so you are compatible with fewer people. Such is a quandary of life. Indeed, indubitably. But what is your experience with this? What is your experience with this? And what's getting in your way of releasing attachment and letting people just kind of do what they're going to do and be who they are? You know what I mean? And this brings me to the final point here, which is, well, Travis, what happens when, yeah, it's all nice and cute to be all armored up and like strong and like gonna be resilient and work on myself and be bad and unbothered. But what happens when I really care? Right? It's like easy to talk about this stuff in theory, like a lot of dating experts do. I'm not a dating expert. I talk about the human experience. I also talk about other things. It's easy to talk about this in practice, but much harder to implement it when you care and you catch feelings. Right? And so when you know how disappointing relationships, even friendships can be, and you've experienced a lot of disappointment, it can make you very hesitant to involve yourself with anyone new. Because while your younger self was a little bit naive, right? And deeply optimistic and woefully underprepared for how painful it can be to give your heart to the wrong people, your more mature self knows just how costly it can be financially, mentally, emotionally to give your heart to the wrong people, right? And so for all those reasons, you're cautious and guarded. And to that we say, well, it's still better to have loved than to not love at all. Even though it's scary, it's still better. We just got to be more strategic and calculated, very mindful and very demure of how we do it. You know what I'm saying? Very mindful and demure. How do we do that? Well, discernment. But then begs the question of, as we mentioned, when you care about someone, right? And you do catch those feelings, how to navigate that odd water of, I don't like this, I want to change this. Like, I need you to fix this for me to be okay. Versus, I'm going to let you do as you are, be as you are. And what's interesting is the right person is going to say, let me work on that in the ways that they can to make you feel more loved. I know people who, especially men, I know men who have worked on being better communicators, have worked on being more emotionally present and available and communicative for their girlfriends or their boyfriends, their partners, because that mattered to their partner. And so they cared enough to be like, oh, well, that's not how I naturally am, but let me work on that. Right? Because I'm not going to die on the hill. That's just the way I am. If it means missing out on the best thing or the best person that could have ever happened to me. And to that we say, that's a stand-up gentleman right there. He is the standard. Most guys don't do that. Most guys will change relationships before they work on the parts of themselves that need to evolve. Anywho, the right person will care enough to figure out what makes you feel cared for. But also, when it comes back to anxious tendencies and controlling tendencies, because control is a darling child of anxiety, we have to learn how to be okay with people not doing exactly all of what makes us feel special and validated all the time. So it's a dance between what works for me and what works for you. And ideally, it's a tango. And Brene Brown talks about this, how relationships aren't always 50-50. Sometimes it's I've got 70 and you've got 30. Sometimes it's I've got 20 and you've got 80. I say all that to say the idea of what it looks like for people to meet each other in the middle is a tango. It is both art and science. It's something you figure out. And The mark of maturity and care and true love is the patience and the thoughtfulness to figure out what it takes to really show up for someone in a way that makes them feel cared for, cherished, valued, all that. And to be willing to do that in reverse for the other person. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. I have a whole workshop series over on my Patreon about this sort of stuff around choosing yourself, cultivating healthy relationships. And we talk about other topics pertaining to grief, reinvention, transitions with regard to career and creativity. Because a lot of these themes are interconnected. I find that a lot of people who gravitate toward my work are sensitive and thoughtful, as I've mentioned before. And as such, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to navigate this world with that wiring and not feel absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because you notice more than the average person. You pay attention in ways that others don't. And the highs are higher, the lows are lower as a result. And it's not that that's defective wiring. It's just that it takes a unique blueprint to thrive when you are wired this kind of way. And for the longest time, I did not realize what I needed to thrive in this kind of way. But big part of it is coming home to ourselves, like we mentioned, knowing that most people won't change. And if they do, it's going to be because things are dire and it benefits them to change. And even then they might not change. But that's okay. We can be okay no matter what, because we know what to filter for, what to sort for, as we're considering who we let opt into this experience called our life. You know what I'm saying? What did you take away from this episode? Share with a friend if they are also struggling with control or change and letting people be who they are versus trying to control the dynamic. You know what I mean? It's tough. It's really tough. Anywho, we'll talk soon. I've got to run. Bye, cousins.